Oh hell yeah! You didn't think something like this would be circulating on Twitter the past day and we wouldn't make a video about it? Hell nah, buddy. Today we are going over to the Minnesota Wild and we're going over to the Chicago Blackhawks, two Central Division rivals and two teams that have themselves a very interesting link that has been suggested with one of the NHL's superstars. So, I'm sorry if you can hear the clouds and the air in the background of this video. It's kind of loud outside here in Vancouver. I don't know what's going on. Are those planes or are those clouds? I can't really tell. Wind. It's kind of loud, isn't it? But today we're referring to a report published on BR Open Ice from yesterday. This was on Twitter, and it got a lot of people talking. The tweet had 600,000 views, and it went out there and said this. Mark Lazarus of The Athletic said a lot could change before then, but that the rumor on the draft floor back in June was that Kirill Kaprizov wanted to be in Chicago. And the quote here reads this, Kaprizov wants to come to Chicago in 2026. And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal, man. Citing one of the Athletic insiders and saying, yeah, no, he's saying that Kirill Kaprizov wants to go to Chicago. That is absolutely wild, and some of the replies are kind of funny. I mean, let's just go over and scroll through these. I'll quit watching hockey if he goes to Chicago. Mark Lazarus of Lamau, let me stop you right there. Okay, that's kind of funny. Kirill is not going to that dumpster fire. Is it April already? Lots of stuff going on here. Let's talk about Kirill Kaprizov for a little bit before we dive into the response, because we did get a response here. Kirill Kaprizov is 27 years old and signed on till the end of 2025-2026, making $9 million a year. It was a really big deal when Kaprizov signed that $9 million AAV contract, which saw him making this amount of money only for 5 seasons. Now, 5 seasons isn't 4, it's not 3, it's a decent amount, but it's not 8. And for Kaprizov to kind of go the Auston Matthews route with this, he's trying to take himself over to 2026, where he will be, 29 years old, and by the time that rolls around, he'll be still really good, and he'll be able to get more money and everything else in between, so he's doing the Auston Matthews thing. Not surprising. He got 96 points last year in 75 games. He had 108 points 2 seasons ago. Kirill Kaprizov's one of the best players in the NHL. Consistent 40-goal guy, consistent 90 to 100-point guy. He's that darn good. But the Minnesota Wild haven't necessarily matched that caliber of good in their own season's performances. They missed the playoffs this previous year, and Kirill Kaprizov was the best player on the team by far. Now, things are actually getting better in Minnesota. Boldy, Eriksson Ek, these guys are great. Brock Faber and Marco Rossi coming over here. It's just a matter of time until the Minnesota Wild are considered good again. Not good as in like, oh, good enough to make the playoffs, because they've done that a lot the past few years, but good as in like, oh, they are a good, challenging team. A team that you can actually project to winning a few playoff rounds. It's been a while since then, and I think the Wild kind of swimming in this pool of mediocrity and sure, being above average. They're not missing the playoffs every single year. They just missed it last year. But there still is that sort of window. If you wanted to debate that Kirill Kaprizov has a realistic argument, a bone to pick, and say, hey, the Minnesota Wild might not be getting as good as quickly as I need them to in order for me to play my best hockey, in order for me to maximize on my earning potential, let me go to Chicago, a worse team that's in need of a bigger spark, but that already has some franchise-defining talent on it, like Connor Bedard, and guys around him that could bolster up my game, like Tyler Bertuzzi, like Taylor Hall, like, I don't know, all the defensemen they're going to get onto their team. Artem Levshunov's going to be great. Who knows if there is a realistic idea that says that Kirill Bill Kirill wants to go over to Chicago. And the reason we are making this video in response to everything is because Mark Lazarus himself actually did respond. Take a look at this. Let me clarify, please. I reported back in June that the Blackhawks see Kaprizov as a potential big ad in 2 years. This generation's Marian Hossa, so to speak. Is Kaprizov intrigued by the possibility? Sure. Does he want it now? No. I misspoke extemporaneously on the pod. And I pronounced that right, didn't I? extemporaneously is composed, performed, or uttered in the spur of a moment. So Lazarus is saying, yeah, no, I just kind of said it out of nowhere. It's not really like that. It was a spur-of-the-moment, misspeaking moment. Lazarus then replies, Kaprizov has 2 years left on his contract. This decision is forever away. Nothing is imminent. Nothing is set in stone. Kaprizov is not asking out. Nothing like that. Stand down. I didn't intend to imply otherwise. In short, the Blackhawks have their eye on Kaprizov in 2 years, not the other way around. Too late. The train has already left the station, Mark. Kaprizov Bedard 2026 locked in. Yeah, okay. Let's just roll with it for now because it makes for a funny headline, but there are a bunch of people in the replies clowning Lazarus for this. We're not going to read that just for the sake of keeping his reputation, but either way, fans are responding to this Kirill idea in a pretty interesting way. A lot of them are, acknowledging what Lazarus is saying. Oh yeah, thanks for clarifying it up, yada yada yada. But others are saying, hey, let's see what Kirill Kaprizov could do in Chicago. Marian Hossa had a pretty similar situation with his career. He was so good, so dominant, and then he went to a whole bunch of other teams. He was on the Pittsburgh Penguins, he was on the Red Wings, he was on both of those teams when they played off against each other in the finals, and he was on the losing team both sides in a row. Very unfortunate for Marian Hossa, but then he ended up winning some cups with the Chicago Blackhawks later on. He got 3. So, good on him. He had his number retired by the organization as well. That's kind of nuts when you think about it. But if Dollar Bill Kirill wants to maximize his earning potential, hey, what better team to do that than the Chicago Blackhawks, who have no real huge money tied up to anybody other than Seth Jones. But realistically, one Seth Jones in a rising cap market is not going to be enough to hold down what Kirill Kaprizov's earning potential could be as a free agent in Chicago. You give Bedard whatever the hell he wants. You give him $10 million, $11 million, whatever. You give Kaprizov $15 million because he's a free agent and he's asking for it, and he wants to be one of the highest paid players in the NHL. You give it to him, you shut up, you move on. That's exactly how it's going to go if Kirill Kaprizov signs in Chicago in 2026, and the idea of him potentially being intrigued and wanting to go there is kind of nuts too, but then you think about it like, hey, imagine Kaprizov and Bedard playing together. That'd be nuts. Let's get nuts. How about it? So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this idea that in 2026, Kirill Kaprizov might actually have a significant interest in going over to Chicago, and how the Blackhawks themselves would be interested in pulling this off as well? How good do you think Connor Bedard is going to be in 2026, and how much better do you think he'll produce if he's got Kirill Kaprizov on his wing? No disrespect, of course, to Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno, but Kaprizov is an entirely different animal. Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.